Started then? Okay, so firstly, thanks to everyone who is in attendance today. I know a lot of cast and crew here, including all our main cast and crew as well. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for having Vengeance at Fighting Spirit. You know, we're really happy to have the screening here. And did you all enjoy the film? It's amazing.
We should have someone going. Shit.
Okay, so yeah, so should we kick things off then? Cool, excellent. Okay, so me and Mike have a few questions prepared, and then we'll pass everything over to the crowd so you guys can ask questions too. So I'm going to ask Stu something very quickly because I'm a huge wrestling fan. So I'm really happy to see you here. So I just wanted to ask you, I know you did some acting while you were in WWE, but how was the transition from going from wrestling to full-time acting? How did you find that? Sorry, we have to share mics because we've only got 4, so.
Yeah, so you're right, I did do a bit of acting while I was with WWE, and WWE in general, professional wrestling is performance-based, it's not sport, sorry to break it. He's a big wrestling fan, sorry. Yeah, there's a lot of acting and performance involved in that. The biggest difference was that acting in professional wrestling is very much over the top and it's very cheesy, and the thing they teach you on your first day in wrestling school is you have to imagine you're in this wrestling ring and there's a guy right at the very back of potentially a giant stadium who you look tiny, so every action you do or reaction needs to be over the top and big. So the biggest difference for me in terms of acting in things like Vengeance is bringing that performance down many notches and making it more realistic, and hopefully I did that in Vengeance. That was kind of the aim to bring that performance down and play it very naturally, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed your performance actually. I thought you really stood out in the film. And I guess the other thing I was thinking about was, I was talking to Ross about this a couple of weeks ago, and it's kind of, we were talking about how when you are wrestling full time, it's a really difficult and demanding job because you're out doing shows 4 or 5 nights a week. And then so when you go to acting, it's kind of different because you're not doing so much intensively over and over again, if that makes sense. So, I mean, so is it harder or easier? I don't really know how to say it.
I'd say both are equally intense. I mean, the difference is that professional wrestling, when I was doing that, the biggest difference was I was doing it non-stop. So I'd be on the road 275 nights a year. I'd be staying in hotel rooms and constantly driving around and stuff, whereas Vengeance was a 4-week shoot. It was incredibly intense for that 4 weeks, but the great part about it for me was that I was in the same bed every single night, so I wasn't having to get in a rental car and drive 300 miles to the next town and then get up at 4 a.m. to catch a 6 a.m. flight to fly to the next place or whatever it was. So it was nice to have that stability, but in terms of the intensity and the work required during that shoot, we were filming 6 days a week, 1 day off, straight back at it on Monday, and there was really very little downtime at all, so it was incredibly intense.
I think everyone will agree, John Gold's a great badass character, but he's also a good anti-hero. He's very tough, but very righteous. And what's interesting, I know that, Ross, particularly for you, the psychology of the fights is a really important aspect you wanted to put across. Could you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, so, and that also goes for Stu as well, particularly just specifically on your character. I think you were even saying that you kind of wanted to use this as a vehicle in some ways to transition your audience perception of you, because you're perceived as a heel, as for whatever they were saying it. Well, John Gold is a badass and a kick-ass guy, but yeah, like you say, he's righteous and he's you know, dare I say, he's fighting from the good side. And it was really important, even in terms of things like fight choreography. We changed some fight choreo, particularly in the fight with Gary at the end, I think, which involved the spitting of the blood. I'm just using this as the example of the psychology of the fighting. I remember we talked to you, and I think you said essentially that would be a heel move, if you correct me if I'm wrong. And we sort of flipped it, and it made a lot more sense in the actual telling of the story and the storytelling of the fight. When we're talking about psychology of the fights, the whole point is that a film shouldn't stop and then there's a fight and then the film carries on. The fight is the same as having an argument or any kind of conversation. Any individual character should move a particular way because they've had certain training or they have different backgrounds. And in the same way, if John Gold fights 7 different guys, those 7 different guys should have, even if they're similar, they should still have different backgrounds, different styles, and they are different people. So they should attack him differently, and he would respond to them differently. I hope that makes sense. So we really did take a fair bit of time when we were going through each fight scene. It's like, who is this character? I mean, I'm sure, Bryan, you'll have something to contribute to that as well, in terms of your character as opposed to, you know,
Hardcore psychopath. Going to full Glasgow on that one? No, I think, well, to add to what you're saying there, talking about characters and fighting and all that, Ross is a big fan of action villains. So the archetypal villains, and he wanted to have a contrast between John being stoic, heroic, anti-hero, mad marshal, and you know, Miss Moneypenny over here. So he wanted a variety of these different characters, and that was something that you said you wanted very early on, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if you take the final action sequence and you take essentially what could have just been 3, well, they are three encounters. You've got, in terms of the end, you've got the fight with yourself, which is a very different animal to a fight with Gary Daniels for obvious reasons, different skill sets and different characters. And then, of course, with Fleur's character, Barnes, there was at one point to see he has a fight, and then he has a fight, and then he has a fight. And that would have been fine, I guess. But we felt it was much more in keeping to have, she would have a different approach as a character. It felt much more in keeping to have, you've got the brawl with Marshall, you've got more of a cat and mouse stalking with Barnes, really. And obviously she's also trying to fake him out, which is kind of fun. And then, of course, you've got essentially a duel with Gary, for want of a better way of saying it. And that was really important, and that comes from the characters.
I've got a question actually for John as a producer. You assembled a really great team. Obviously you've got guys here, I'm sure many of the guys in the audience, and you've got guys like Gary Daniels, really talented guys just to add to this kind of entourage of badass actors and stunt guys, and you know, a great team all around. How was that for you in terms of pulling the project together and actually you know, embarking on the journey of getting it made?
I mean, the honest answer to that is I was on holiday and Diane did it. She's sitting down there. I kind of really. No, it was great. What happened, I think, with this film, the first thing that happened with this film was a lot of love for Mr. Boyask on my right here. He's been making films for, how long have you been doing? 15? 3 years? 3 years. He's been making films for not that long. But he's built himself a reputation as a fantastic action director, and I think him stepping up to do something of this scale, which is bigger than anything you've done before, was, yeah, there was a lot of support and a lot of love for that. And I mean, Gary Daniels, for example, contacted us about playing that role because he knew that Ross was directing, and it really was a case of people finding out what we were doing. Obviously, Stu coming on board was a huge asset. You could tell the story about how that came about in a car park late at night at 3 Mills.
That is actually true.
That is actually true.
That is actually true.
But it was, yeah, it was just a fantastic opportunity to pull all of these people together, and yeah, we're trying to do the same thing again for the sequel.
Great. A question for Fleur as well, because there's some interesting, strong female characters in and amongst, obviously, some tough male characters too. Is this an aspect that appealed to you in the script?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it was just a really nice opportunity to be involved in an action film, which is something I'd never done before, and also just to be not sort of the part that perhaps women aren't usually associated with, the kind of romantic parts, the wife or the mother or the girlfriend. It was nice to be given this part where she's incredibly ambitious and very driven, and kind of sort of, I don't know, overseeing the guys and making sure they were doing what they were supposed to be doing, keeping them in control, keeping them under control. So yeah, it was just a really nice part to get my teeth into. Yeah.
Thank you. So Bryan, I know that you were in Chasing the Dragon with Donnie Yen and Andy Lau. Huge film. Love those guys as well. So what was it like shooting that film over in Asia and then coming back here to do something like Vengeance? Like, what would you say the main differences were?
We shot Vengeance before we did Chasing the Dragon.
Oh, okay, then the other way around then, sorry.
Essentially the same. It really comes down from the top, from the team, from the director, the producers. They have to inspire you to want to do the best job. And that is something that Ross has done better than almost any director I've ever worked with. He makes you want to do a great job. He's very passionate, but that doesn't come even close to what he is. But how does it compare? the food's better, the bigger budget films. You get
there
a
or
big
here?
trailer.
Uh-oh.
Do you know what I mean? You get your per diems are really good. There's as much as my entire fee on Ross's Vengeance per day.
Shut them down. Shut them down now.
Yeah. But was it any more fun? No, it wasn't. You know, it's very intimidating when you're working with somebody like Donnie Yen.
Yeah.
Because he's an icon. And he's such a multi-skilled person. His disciplines, his directing, fight directing, as a human being, he's an artist. But it's also intimidating working with somebody like Ross because you feel that you might let him down. And it's not really about the money at that point. It becomes more about, on day one, Ross gave everyone a great insight to who he was as a human being, and you just felt like you wanted to do the best job you could for him, because the film meant a lot to him. And he was very open and very honest. So, the same but different, I would say. Is that a decent answer?
There are a lot of very cool death scenes and kills from Mr. John Gold, but one highlight was definitely Stu versus Bryan, I think, and I heard a lot of people in the audience kind of cheering and shocked at what happened.
Welcome to the dance.
Could you guys share a little bit about your experience shooting that fight and just putting it together and how the physicality was for you guys?
Sure. So, one of the worst things about coming to watch the final film is seeing how little 7 hours of fighting between us actually turns into when it's finally cut down. And I think we ended up with about 2 minutes in total there. But yeah, it was pretty much a day-long event, that fight scene. And I really didn't know too much about Bryan's kind of fighting ability or athletic ability or anything like that until the day we got to work together. And I think we realized pretty early on that we both wanted to have a brawl, and he was kind of really playing up the Glaswegian nutcase character. And I think, yeah, we were finding an incredibly small space. It was like this disused kitchen, and with two big guys. I'm 6'6", Bryan, what are you, 6'4", something like that?
6'2.5".
6'2.5".
I'm at heels.
I'm trying to build you up. I'm an ex-wrestler, that's what we do.
6'5.5". 6'5.5", Stu. Sorry.
But we're fighting in this tiny little kitchen. We're kind of banging our heads on bits of metal that are hanging down and stuff, and trying to work with what we have around us, like pots and pans hanging down and stuff like that. And we're really figuring out on the day, what do we have to work with? What can you do here? Hey, how about this idea? And just throwing ideas out there. Do you like that? What if I throw you over here? Do you think you can do that? How about this here? And really it was a work in progress throughout the entire 7 hours, and just molding it to something we both felt comfortable with.
There wasn't really a lot of rehearsal for that. We figured it out as we went along. It had to be a brawl. There was no room. What are you laughing at? There was not going to be any spinning back kicks and like jumping somersault stuff. He's from Glasgow. He uses his head and his fists and his knees. It had to be like a brawl in a Glasgow bar.
At the same time, though, there was the story beats without getting too.
Yeah.
Just things like when you spot the wound, you bleed out, all that stuff, and then targeting on that. That was. I think that there were the story moments. I think that you kind of molded the stuff around.
Yeah, I think that's important in any fight scene. There's nothing worse for me as a film viewer, or even a viewer of professional wrestling, to just watch guys doing moves or doing kicks or punches for no reason. This guy does a few kicks, this guy does a few kicks. There has to be a flow to it and a direction where the fight is going. There's a certain element of psychology involved. So anytime we could throw in a reference storyline-wise where Bryan would kick the wound or something like that, we tried to use that wherever we could. So it's not two guys just throwing punches randomly at each other for 2 minutes and then someone dies, which, I don't know, we try and take a bit of a flow throughout the film, that kind of stuff.
That was one of the things that Ross wants throughout the actual physical fight.